Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Happy Friday. It is time for another Pink Sheep and Friends Friday. I wanted to talk really quick about my outfit because I'm super excited about it. I've got my Hey Nikoko headband on, which is super wonderful. And if you guys did not see, the new, just forgot the name, Summer Breeze cardigan is now released, and you can get your copy to make yourself one of these lovely summery cardigans if you would like. I actually used Premier Chunky Cotton for this one. My original, I used Hobie Glitter Delight, held double, because that one's a bulky. This is a super bulky version of super bulky cotton yarn. So super excited. And then of course it's summertime, so now I'm wearing all of my bralettes, but really excited about today's outfit, so that's fun. Also, I think that Hey Nikoko had a release of some new designs for her headbands. I think just like a couple days ago, maybe it might have been yesterday. So if you want to check those out, and you can get 10% off with my code PinkSheep10 if you want to check those out. But cheers, I've got my coffee. Need to finish them. Oh, and I wanted to show you guys. I don't think I've showed this because it's very new still, but I got a new tattoo. Woohoo! And I can't show it on here. Let me stand up. Does that work? Yes, there you go. I finally got a Deathly Hallows tattoo. I have always wanted one. So now I have one. It's not totally healed yet, but really, really excited about it. So, okay, super excited today. And yes, Curious Papaya, that is who I am going to be joined by today. I am going to invite you now, so no worries, I got you. Let's see. Let's get Amy on here. But I'm super excited to bring on Amy of Curious Papaya today for today's Pink Sheep and Friends. I think this is like episode 54, maybe? Hello.
Hi.
Well,
I thought I was
welcome.
Hi. Good to finally like meet you.
Yes, exactly. It's like, I mean, it's just like a Zoom call, but public.
Always fun.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you're able to join. Perfect. I think everything else is good. I was trying to make sure that I can still see myself.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've done a live, and like, yeah, last time I did it, I think it was like over a year ago. So anyway, I was like in there, I was trying to find the button to join, and I was like, actually, I don't know how to join. So I'm glad I
And
didn't do anything wrong.
I'm
Okay.
sure that Instagram has changed it too, since because
Yeah,
they're just moving everything
the
around
link
right now in the
looked
app.
really weird, but that's all right. We're here. We're here. We got our coffee. I'm in my bed because comfiest place to be.
Yes, and I feel like it's been really nice. This is when we moved into this house, it was my first time actually having like an office space.
Oh, yeah.
And so I can actually do everything in here for once, because it used to be like everything, I had some things in this room and some things over here and some things in this one. So
Me right now.
yes.
We live in like a tiny space, so yeah. In front of me in our bedroom is like a bunch of my yarn, and then in the hallway I have some of my yarn, and then tucked between the fridge and the wall are like my photo backdrops. It's just wherever I can find space. So I definitely try not to like buy something I'm not going to use, but of course that's always hard.
That's exactly where I am, because we downsized by about half. So like the house that we were in before was like double the size of this one. And so now it's like I have, and I'll show you really quick. Let's see if you peek up. So this is my organization, and it's like finished products in these, and then I've got some yarn and some of the ones down here. But like once I run out of room in those, I kind of feel bad buying anything, because I'm like, it's literally going to go in like a Tupperware bin, and then you can't see it. You don't remember what you have.
Because you don't remember.
Yes, exactly. Somebody did just ask, where are you from? So where are you from? First, let's start there.
Yeah, I'm actually from the Mitten State, from Michigan. People they're not really familiar, I'm assuming. So like I kind of say Metro Detroit is the best description, but it's not like really Detroit, but people recognize Detroit when I say that, like an hour out. But I was born and raised there. I went to school, like college there, and then I moved out to the West Coast
Okay.
for teaching, actually. So I moved here for a job, and yeah, I've been here since.
That's cool. That's cool. So wait, you grew up where? In Detroit?
Metro Detroit. So
Metro.
it's like,
Yes.
yeah, I don't think people would know the city outside of like the Midwest. So,
Gotcha.
but where
But
are
you
you
don't
located?
but you don't live there now. Where
No. I moved to the West Coast. I'm sorry.
that's what I was wondering. Okay. And
Oh,
where are
I'm
you?
so sorry. I misunderstood.
Are you in California?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm in like the San Francisco area.
Cool.
So San Jose. People probably
Okay.
have
Yeah.
an idea of it.
Yeah. We are in Alabama.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So yes, yeah. I grew up. My husband and I both grew up in Alabama. I grew up in the Montgomery area, and he grew up in the Birmingham area.
Wow.
And I think my dog just tried to.
He wants to join our live.
Yes, I'm gonna move this really quick. I have a little weight.
To block him
I
out.
literally have this little weight. But the problem is, if he actually tries, he knocks it onto the floor. And we have like that vinyl laminate flooring that looks like wood, and I'm like, one of these days he's gonna knock it on the floor and like knock a hole into the tile.
When you grab those baby gates.
Yes. But we grew up here. We moved to Atlanta, Georgia, for about 7 or 8 years, and then decided to move back right after. I mean, it was literally kind of at the tail end of the worst part of COVID. Like, we kind of felt comfortable making a move.
Yeah.
And move back to, because all of our family's still here. So we figured this was a good time to move home and spend time with, our family as much as we can for now. So I don't know, but in 5-10 years, I don't know where we'll be, So
I've always wanted to
cool.
visit. Yeah. I had like a really good friend in college who was from Alabama, actually. And yeah, I mean, I always thought about like checking it out, and I don't get to travel that much anymore with the 2 kids, but
Yes,
that's really nice.
yeah.
I'm going to Texas for the first time next month, so like,
Oh, that's exciting.
yeah.
What are you going to Texas for?
My brother-in-law and his family live there.
Okay.
But yeah, I think like there's a lot to do there. I think we're
Yes.
gonna Houston? I think Houston, yeah.
Okay.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, we've talked about visiting. We got an RV this year. Super exciting. So that's been our goal, has been to travel more because we have our dogs and we want to bring them with us. So we always knew that would probably be the best route to take, is to get an RV so we can take them.
Yeah.
And my husband wants to go to Big Bend National Park, which is in Texas, and it's supposed to be the best place to stargaze because the skies are so dark there. So we might go to Texas too at some point.
I definitely think like traveling is like one of those things that can never be a wasted experience. Like, if you're going to spend your money somewhere in life, traveling is definitely worth it.
I agree 100%. Yeah, better than stuff.
So cool.
Well, I totally skipped your introduction. So if you would like, just in case anyone watching, if you do not know who Amy is, if you just want to give a quick little intro of who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much for having me on the live. My name is Amy, and I am based in California in the Bay Area. And I started crocheting about 5 years ago now. It's kind of crazy to say it like that. And like just slowly grew my small business from like a hobby page to like, a little Etsy shop, and then started designing more seriously. And then since I took time off from teaching, it's kind of been my full-time gig, and like I love it. I love to get like my creative juices out every day, like living out my dream in that way, you know? And then I guess I would say I like to design like quirky things that a lot of them have to do with like my Asian American heritage, which I saw that you like shared that in like that post, and I was like, it's like a great like elevator speech kind of thing. It
was on your website, so you've already got it.
and then I like to make like really small, intricate things at times, but I also like to make like giant things. Like I brought my burger.
Yes. Oh, I love it so much. And that's your new one, right?
Yeah, it's my newest release pattern, and then I'm working on these right now for 4th of July.
That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so really
Yeah.
simple, but you would, oh my gosh, it was a lot of frogging, and frogging in
Yes.
this country, is
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like to make like giant, simple things for people, but I also like to spend time really like teasing my brain and like, you know, taking on challenges of how to shape
Yeah.
things when it comes to intricate designs. So that kind of describes a little bit of my design style, I
Yeah.
guess you could say.
Yeah. I love it. I'm obviously drawn to chunky yarn. So anytime I see fellow chunky yarn lovers, I'm like, let's bring it on. Let's talk about it. Um, so what made you want to learn how to crochet? What was kind of that tipping point of like, I need to learn how to do
Oh my
this?
goodness. Well, I actually was first exposed to it in, I think, like middle school or high school.
Okay.
Like a friend of mine had made a Kirby plush, and I was like, "What? That's so cool! Like that you could make your own plushie."
And being that young,
Yeah,
like I don't see as many like high schoolers
you learn
making.
from YouTube, and so I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, that's really cool," but I didn't actually like pick it up until many, many, many years later. Um, but yeah, it was like actually because I was having an extremely difficult year of teaching, um, very early on in my career. So as people say, they're like, "Oh, you're a part of," like I would hear over and over from like mentors and like people who had been in the field that like, teacher burnout within
Yeah.
the first 5 years is super common. And,
Oh,
they're kind of like, it's not for everyone, but in a way where it was kind of like, yeah, if you give up, we don't blame you, sort of thing, which
oh,
is sad, right?
oh,
That is
yeah.
the attitude given to educators, but I digress. It was one of those years.
Yeah.
Um, like kids who need the extra love, that's not the issue. It was, I was having a difficult time with parents, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
um, yeah, that's the truth. That's like most of the time when it comes to teachers burning out, it's not that we don't care for and want to be there for the kids. It's like the lack of support, or
Yes.
worse, accusations and dealing with a lot of like mental load
Yeah.
from difficult families. And anyway, it was that year for me. And so I was like so burnt out. I was like extremely tired. I would like nap as soon as I got
Mhm.
home, and I just picked up a hobby thinking it'd be nice to like learn something new, like
Yeah.
direct all of my attention into like perfecting, not perfecting, I should say, but like just like honing in on a new craft,
Yeah.
take my mind off of things. And like I quickly learned that with crocheting, it was like super hard to multitask and do anything else, which is good in my
Yeah. Yeah.
situation because all I could do for hours at a time was like
Yeah.
count and focus on counting. And if my husband was trying to talk to me, I'd be like, counting louder, like, oh, you
Yeah.
can
I
do this, I
think
count.
we've
Yeah.
all done that.
Yeah. And then like it just started from there. I was like posting photos, and like friends were like, hey, can you make me this and this? Can you make me my pets? And I was super honored to. I wouldn't say that I was like that great, but it was fun. That's
Yeah.
how I started.
That's awesome. And did you have kids at that time or that they come later?
They came later.
Gotcha.
That year of like difficult teaching was like right when I got married. So kids didn't
Gotcha.
come for a couple years later during the pandemic. Yeah, we had two COVID
Yeah.
babies.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh, well, I'm glad everybody is safe and healthy. I think that's the big thing there, knowing what people went through. Anyone who had not just health concerns, but pregnancies and anything health related that was happening during that time was super stressful on top of the stress of a pregnancy.
Oh my goodness, tell me about it. Yeah, thank goodness,
Ah,
for sure. We're very grateful.
yeah. So what do you teach, if you don't mind me asking? What's your
Yeah.
specialty when you're teaching?
So I teach elementary education, and I taught fourth grade for a couple years, and then second grade before that for a couple years. Um, and like I love the elementary age. Like, but it's funny because like whatever teachers you talk to, and when they talk about the grade level that they teach, they're like, I could never do. And then they insert,
Yeah.
the grade level that they're not teaching. Like I could never do high school. I would be
Yeah.
so intimidated by like these like young
Oh,
adults who are like taller than me. I don't know
yeah.
how I would deal with like behavioral issues at that age, you know? And um yeah, it's more like at least I feel more comfortable like appealing to and connecting
Yeah.
with like kids who are 10 and under.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely like something I cared about from an early age. Like working with students, working with youth. Yeah,
Mhm.
I always like volunteered at like kids camps growing up, and then like did like counseling gigs for camps. And then I actually chose like the college I went to because of their elementary education program.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, so like I remember how impactful my teachers were in my life
Mhm.
growing up, and so I think that was a big reason why I went into it.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be off from it right now.
Do you
After
want to continue teaching?
I really do, but it's also one of those things where it's like it's so demanding.
Yeah.
I think when you are a seasoned teacher and you get to stay in the same school, same classroom, you don't have to like unpack and pack up and redevelop your curriculum.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a lot like more manageable when you have young kids of your own. But the reality is, like, at least in our district, there's so much movement. And that's largely due to, you know, so many families in the Bay Area moving out actually to
Yeah.
Texas and Arizona, especially. So our kids' population is shrinking, which means we're getting tossed around. And
Ah.
it's a lot to think about, like, while my kids are 1 and 3.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a handful.
Yeah, it's never off the table for me. But in the meantime, I'm just really soaking it in, getting to stay home with my youngest one, and also designing full time, so to
Yeah.
speak.
What is that like with kids? So being a designer and having your kids at home, like, are you able to get them involved in any way? What is that like for you?
Oh, they're like super interested, of course. Like because I'm making toys, you know, they
Mm-hmm.
want to play with it, but then at the same time, like, I haven't photographed
Yeah.
it yet, or like, you know, I need to keep it in pristine condition because it's actually for me to sell, and so
Yeah.
it's like a weird like fine line of like, yeah, this is for you, you can play with it, and they're like, I can,
Yeah.
like, really? Okay, and they like go wild, and you know, and the other part is like they respect that they're not allowed to touch the yarn wall. By touch, I
Mhm.
mean pull
Yeah.
everything down because that's like their
Yeah.
favorite thing if I don't stop them. But yeah, there are days where I'm able to crank out a lot because they are like doing activities next to
Mhm.
me, and you know, I'll be like designing one part and like be playing with Play-Doh on the other part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, or another like hack is like take them outside to our backyard and let them play in the water table, and I'm just enjoying supervising while I'm working on stuff.
Yeah.
So it's juggling, but of course, when it comes down to it, when kids are not feeling well, of course, they come first, and that means
Yeah.
that my work has to be tabled. That's
Yeah.
like a luxury, though, you know, that I can put that on the side and prioritize my kids if they need me, which is like all the time because they're so
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, most of the time, though, I do like, I'm so guilty of staying up way later than I should. And like, I work when the house is like quiet and
Yeah.
like in the darkness.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is my time. Yeah.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah.
Well, this has been my grind since
Yeah.
like 2020, I think is like when I, yeah, took off work from my daughter. I went back for a year and then I took another year off for my
Yeah.
son. So, mhm.
Did you, how many patterns, do you know how many patterns you have out right now?
I want to say I have about 60-ish, maybe 70.
Oh, yes.
But I did like retire a few because they're not great. But like I kept the ones that are free up, because like a lot of people still search for those, but like looking at the designs for in my earlier like days of like creating,
Yeah.
I would say like there's so many things I would have redone. So yeah, not to crowd my storefront, I took them down.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Do you think you'd revisit some of those older patterns and like re-release them as like new and improved, or do you think it's like I'm just moving on, I got too many new ideas?
I That's like such a dilemma because I did attempt that. I'll like share a couple failure stories.
Hmm.
Um, like I designed like a polar bear, and
Oh,
then like to my surprise, maybe it didn't photograph well with the texture of yarn. It might have just looked like not as clean as I don't
hmm,
know what it was actually, you know? But like it did so terribly. Like I think I sold like
oh,
one copy. And
yeah.
and I learned like a huge lesson from that because I was like, yeah, actually there's a lot of reasons why this might not have done well. One being like bears, bunnies of that sort are really, really like oversaturated on this market.
Gotcha.
You can get tons and tons of them for free, I guess,
Mhm.
is what I realized after the fact. So I like spent all this time redesigning it. I republished it and still the same response. So I
Mhm.
think it was like better off to make those kinds of things like free
Yeah.
and like just go for the marketing and like the shares and like the exposure pretty much that comes from like popular characters or brands without
Mhm.
like hoping to monetize from like sales alone.
Yes.
I guess, yeah.
That's tough though, and it's so hard to know because I've had that happen. One specifically was my Angelica jacket that I had
Mhm.
released last spring. I was in love with it. I thought it was like the coolest thing since sliced bread. I thought it was a really neat design. And I think on release day I sold like one of them. I think I did. I think I sold one, and I was like, oh
Oh
man.
yeah, I've had
But
that too.
but you know, I think the beauty of crochet designing is that they're out there forever. Like you don't know how designs and fashion and trends are going to
Mhm.
change. And so there may be a point where in a couple of years, for some reason, polar bears are crazy. And if you have that design that's still available, then it might sell like crazy. You just never know,
That is really
which I think
true.
is nice.
Yeah. That did happen to another one of my designs. Like I have a giant spider pattern,
Hmm.
and like released it around Halloween, thinking it's like a seasonal item. But all of a sudden, and I don't know where it got shared. All of a sudden, I was getting like all these dings. Like it started popping
Yeah.
off, and like I saw tons of people tag me in their creations, which was really awesome to see as a designer, like
Yes.
people really enjoying the things that you create because it's kind of like putting your art out there. There's always
Hmm.
going to be critics, and you know, but it was like very heartwarming, very encouraging. Yeah, you're right though. You just never know.
Hmm. And when did that spider one go? Like, when did you get all those sales? Was that a while back or?
It was, I want to say, like the last couple of months, it started like
Gotcha.
trending on Pinterest and
Ah,
Etsy. And I was like, why are people looking for spider patterns in the spring? But okay,
right.
yeah.
I feel like that was one of the first designs that I shared of yours in a roundup, and that was last year for like a
You're
Halloween
right.
one.
Yeah, that's how
Um,
we first connected. Yeah.
yeah, because I try to find like I would just focus on super bulky patterns, but there are so many amigurumi patterns that can be made with super bulky yarn anyway.
Hmm.
And so I think I started telling myself, okay, it's going to be really difficult for me to just always do bulky and super bulky patterns and roundups. So
Yeah.
I'll just find that. Then I find people like you, and I'm like, that just made my job so easy. Now, like I know that you're going to have different items, and I can pull them for different categories, and
Oh,
that's always really
good.
fun.
I super appreciate the share for
Yeah, of
sure.
course. So is the burger that you're holding? So is that one a no sew pattern? Did I hear that? Did I read that correctly? Like no sewing
Yeah.
involved?
So this one is a no-sew. It didn't start off that way.
Yeah.
I was thinking like I would make all the layers, but then of course with this yarn, everything is extra like fluffy.
Yes.
So then I was like thinking really hard about it, and I was like, how do I make this so it's like easy enough and accessible
Hmm.
to people of all levels? And I was like, no sew actually could happen.
Yeah.
And I had created my first like mini no sew otter this year.
Hmm.
It's not really a field I have a ton of patterns in, like no sew I mean. So I was
Yeah.
like, it was quite a challenge for me to think about that.
Yeah.
But it worked out perfectly, and I was like, oh, that's great. Then I have to start thinking of more no sew patterns.
Yes. Yeah. I think people are drawn to that, especially if they're new to crocheting. And, I know for me, my background, I had a little bit of sewing experience, so that never really concerned me because I learned just the basics of like hand sewing. But I know there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who didn't have that. And so that feels even more, even more intimidating than just learning how to crochet too. Like
For
now I'm having to learn
sure.
new skills.
Yeah, for sure. Sewing the pieces and knowing like which loop to
Yeah.
sew through and all that. It's a skill too that I don't think crocheters really talk about. Like we're like, oh, we all
Yeah.
dread it, right? Because we want to make the thing, not
Hmm.
assemble it. But it is one of those things where like I put aside projects for when I feel like sewing, like when I'm
Yeah.
watching a show and I can't count.
Yeah.
Like sewing actually is like what I reserve for those times. And then I like create the situation where I will look forward to it.
Yeah.
But that means that like yeah, works in progress can sit there on my shelf for a long time before I pick them up again
Yeah.
and finish them up. Yeah.
And I think that's the same with weaving in ends. It can be like a nice experience if like that's like you said, if you're watching something and you actually want to be able to kind of focus a little bit more on that because
Yeah.
you're not having to count, you're not having to, so sometimes it can be nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think the worst weaving in ends experience I had, I just made a vest pattern that's testing right now, but I wanted to make, so you're talking about your stars for red, white, and blue stars. I've never made a pattern that was for like 4th of July. Now this one's not for 4th of July, but I was like, I'm gonna make myself a 4th of July version. Um, and so this is what it looks like. I do have it because I was just about to
I
do a
want to see
video,
it.
but
Oh my
this is the
goodness.
little vest.
That is so cute. You know,
And
that reminds me of those rocket
yeah,
pops.
yes,
Yeah.
colors were perfect. The colors, the bright colors, and this is, I think it's being discontinued. It's that
Oh,
Premier Cotton XL Home
oh yeah.
cotton, and it's like a tube, almost like a tubular braided structure,
Yeah.
but not
I'm like looking
polyfill or
really
anything.
close, like
It's like a
under
chain
the camera trying to see the
chain structure. There we go. So it's kind of
Yeah,
chain.
that's so
Um,
cool. Oh my
but worst yarn to try to like weave in because like I know
God.
it's gonna come apart, and so I want to do knots, but then it's such chunky yarn. So like I was trying to find so you can see and having to change colors. I have all these knots
Oh,
on the inside
well,
going up the edge.
you just gotta
But
protect your arms.
yeah, I put them all on the inside. It's no big deal.
Yeah, really cute. I've always wanted to like attempt a
Mhm.
wearable, because actually I didn't start off crocheting with like a granny square as
Yeah.
many people learn that way. I like jumped
Mhm.
in head first.
Mhm.
I was like YouTubing tutorials and I think I followed like a bunny tutorial to make my
Yeah.
very first amigurumi.
Yep.
And it was interesting because it was in UK terms, which I was not familiar that there was a
Huh?
difference. So I got
Yeah.
all my stitches all mixed up, obviously. Yeah. And then it was also not in a spiral. So for amigurumi, usually you work in a spiral. So joining was also really challenging.
Yeah.
But that's how I learned. So I've never ever made well, actually, I take that back. I made a bag last year. I did make a
Mhm.
like a granny square bag from All About Me.
Gotcha.
But like as in a cardigan,
Yeah.
for sure. That's something on my to-do list this year. It's gonna
Oh,
happen.
okay. Well, if you want, I will send you one of my super bulky cardigan patterns,
What do you?
and you can
Yeah.
try
Oh,
it. Mhm.
thanks.
Mhm.
What kind of
Yeah.
yarn do you?
So, I mean, it really just depends. I made it my goal a couple years ago to start trying out more and more of the bulky and super bulky options out there because that's always my biggest question is like, what yarn should I use?
Mm-hmm.
And, really, most of my patterns will work with anything from that family. So as long as you're buying the super bulky category, but I learned very quickly that super bulky and jumbo yarn kind of cross over in the middle there because, and I tell them you have to look at what hook the yarn recommends. Because if it recommends between an 8 and a 10, 8 millimeter to 10 millimeter,
Mm-hmm.
it's usually good for like my cardigan patterns. This pattern here is like blanket yarn. This one was a discontinued yarn by Premier. It was like Isaac Mizrahi.
Oh,
But it's like very like watercolor
yeah,
looking.
yeah.
Um, but then you've got like t-shirt yarn that says it's a super bulky, but usually it'll recommend more like a 12 to 15
Oh,
millimeter.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's a crossover where like some super bulky will recommend 12 to 15, and then some jumbo 7 weight will recommend a 12 to 15. But then you have the jumbo 7 weight that recommends 25 millimeter. So you really have to look, like you can't buy just any jumbo yarn, because you may end up with Bernat big, like the really
Yeah.
big Bernat blanket yarn. Like, I'll show you. Let's see. Oh,
I know exactly. I
oh
know
yeah,
what you're talking
right
about.
there.
I actually had a dilemma with this like recently because some lovely customers were attempting one of my giant Ami patterns
Mm-hmm.
with that specific brand, and they're like, "Well, it says 7," and I'm like, "Oh no, it's like quadruple the thickness
Yes.
of the other 7 that I'm prescribing." So it's like really
Yeah.
important to use
Because it's
one.
like that's the 7 weight Bernat big that recommends a 25 millimeter. But then this is also considered a 7 weight.
Right,
So like
right,
these
exactly.
two don't equal.
Oh my goodness. Also, since I have it, yeah, same thing. So these are the same brand of yarn,
Mhm.
the Sweet Snuggles,
Yes.
and you can see the blue
One's
one's a lot
bigger.
bigger. And the thing is,
Yes.
I've been using this since I started, right? So like maybe like 2019ish is when I
Hmm.
did it for the first time. But like I can tell for sure consistently the white, for whatever reason, is always so much thinner than all the other colors. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, like I have the red here, and this feels so thick compared to the
Yes.
white. So it is like within the same brand, even different
Hmm.
colors have a. So it's all like, how do you like explain that to people trying to follow your
Yes.
pattern? No,
Well,
but
and I did start including now, especially like for this vest pattern,
mhm.
because I did use a 7 weight yarn, but you can get away with, again, like the t-shirt yarn that says it's a super bulky, you can get away with using that. So I've started saying under like the type of yarn to use on my pattern, I'll say um, any super bulky or jumbo that recommends this size hook on its label. So like
Oh,
if it recommends between like a 12 and a 15, so that kind of gives them a little bit more of like, I can look on the label and make sure, because if it recommends a 25 millimeter hook, it's probably not going to work for this one. So that might be helpful, you know.
yeah, I should do
Um,
that. Well, thank you for that suggestion.
yeah, of course. I just started doing that. So we'll see if people actually, if it helps at all. But talking about the yarn, I tried Chanel yarn for the first time last year. That was a big fall when I hadn't ever used that type of yarn. So I made a couple things with blanket yarn, this like 25 millimeter
Mm.
ginormous stuff. Tried Premier, what's theirs called? Parfait
Okay.
XL.
Yeah.
Tried that.
Mhm.
I struggle with the Chanel, and I would love your opinion on this. So,
Yeah.
because you work with a lot of Chanel style yarn, what are some of the things that you do to help keep it from shedding, or dealing with like when you're weaving in your ends? I know with amigurumi, sometimes you can just shove it down in there and that
Yeah.
usually works. But if
Yeah.
you have any tips.
Sure. Let me think. I'm on the spot right now.
Yeah, I
One
know.
is like expecting the shedding. So like I kind of pick it up as I work and I stuff it
Hmm.
inside of it so that it's not everywhere.
Gotcha.
But just accepting the fact that it will kind of look like you butchered a chicken in
Yeah.
there. Like just accepting it kind of helps. And then, planning for cleanup appropriately. But another thing, like if you are really picky about all of the fluff, is just have a lighter on hand. And when you're about to
Gotcha.
sew pieces, like light the tip quickly and it'll seal it so that it can't keep shedding actually. I
Okay.
say that, but then it's like in reality, I'm like, do I want to go find my lighter? Like, I'm just going to deal with the mess instead, right? Um, and another is, let me think. Another is when you're sewing, actually, you can use acrylic yarn.
Hmm.
Like if you're doing something in like white yarn, for instance, and you use acrylic yarn, it actually holds a lot stronger, and also you cannot see it at all. Like
Gotcha.
texture actually like, swallows it up, so that's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah,
And
and
that's
then,
if you're having to sew up pieces.
yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Like rarely will I have, unless I'm working in like rows, like something flat for amigurumi, like a wing or something.
Hmm.
I won't have to weave in my tail ends that often.
That's nice.
But yeah, lighting the tips with fire is actually the best recommendation. Except You just have to like be careful not to light the whole thing on
So
fire.
I have like the worst fear that I'm gonna light it and it's gonna be like a dynamite thing where it just like the fire just shoots off the edge and like catches the whole thing on fire.
Disclaimer. Yes, like that's cool. So yes, with caution, with parental supervision, if you are someone tuning in who is younger, I guess I can't be blamed. Don't mention my name.
Or just like supervision of another adult. So,
Yeah. That's true. Anything regarding fire.
well, and it's so funny because you talked about having like a lighter with you, and I feel like that's one thing people are gonna think you're a smoker if you just have like lighters in every single project bag. You know, like can't forget the lighter.
I know, and if you're in public too, like, is that allowed? Are you allowed to light things like indoors?
Oh, no.
Right? Maybe not.
You'd be like, it's not a cigarette, I promise. Like, because now it's like illegal everywhere. It feels like. My husband quit smoking. Like, I mean, it's been over a year, if that now. But I used to kind of like collect lighters because there were some really cool ones, and he always had one on him. And now I still do it because you still need lighters for stuff. So I'll still be like finding cool lighters and bringing them home. So,
Oh, but that's also, wonderful. I don't want to like move on from that too fast. Like, that's great for your husband. I'm really happy for you guys.
yeah. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there who started smoking really young, and like it's really hard to kick the habit. And he had tried a couple times, but it's like it has to be the right time,
Sure.
in your life to make that decision. And I mean, I'm really proud of him. There were people forever who were like, you just need to make him quit smoking. I was like, you can't make people do anything. I mean, people have to want to do things for themselves, and like it has to be the right time in their life, and obviously have support. But I feel like that's, yes. So let's see. Okay, we still have plenty of time. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your inspiration process. So especially if you get to a point where maybe you're feeling a little stuck, or maybe you're just brimming with ideas and like you don't really kind of run out of ideas, but I'd love to know what that looked like for you.
I can tell you where I've been stuck. I can think of one very clearly.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I have been talking about wanting to write an amigurumi crochet pattern book for quite some time. And I did reach out to like a couple of publishers shooting my idea, and they're like, yeah, that's great. We'd love to work with you. Can you send us your proposal? And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Because on one hand, a lot of wonderful designer friends I've chatted with have said like publishers will reach out to them with a proposal and say like, can you design something like mythical fairy kind of creatures sort of thing, or can you design all food patterns or birds, something like that, where it's like giving me a place to start would actually be really helpful. But because I'm getting like 100% creative freedom, it's also like I've been so like nervous about that. I would hit like the biggest writer's block or crocheter's block, if you will. I'm like, do I want to go with the style of like animals dressed in clothes, which is like very universally accepted and popular, or more of like a niche where it would only appeal to a certain crowd? Like that's the hardest thing, But when it comes to like individual patterns, it's obviously like a lot less pressure. Where it's more like I'm going to create things that give me joy and things that I really enjoy. And yeah, that is like ideas are always like popping off of each other, and I have to jot it down somewhere or I'll forget. And typically I'll like work on something and then come back to it in like 6 months, because like either I just can't bring my creative juices to like wrap up a project where it's like something's not right and I can't force myself to finish it. Like I need to sit on this a little longer. Or sometimes a design will be whipped out in like a couple of days. So yeah, it's really fluid. I can't say there's like a specific order to things when it comes to designing.
Well, I have to say you're farther ahead than me on the book thing, because I've thought about that for a long time, and I even like downloaded some of the sheets that you use to like propose ideas, and like looked at some different publishers. But you have reached out and heard back, which is like
Let me
I mean,
let me put it out there though too. It's like any of the collaborations, well, okay, I want to say 90% of the collaborations um, that I'm very grateful to have had, it came from me really
yes.
like being aggressive and like emailing, following up,
Yep.
emailing, following up, you know, and reaching
Same.
out in different social channels. Only because I'm like, it's not a reflection of whether or not they might think your work is good enough or not good enough, but it's more like the more you make your name known, the better
Yes.
chance you have. And it's like one of those things you don't want to be conservative about.
Mm-mm.
Like, be annoying, if you will, because a lot of times you're getting hundreds and hundreds of inquiries a day. So how
Yeah.
do you make yourself like put yourself on their radar, right? And
Yes.
yeah, it's like I'm not like that kind of person in real life with other opportunities. So it's kind of funny. Like I guess I have a little more courage when it comes to like behind the screen with reaching
Yes.
out about those things. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always said that anytime that has come up, like you do have to put yourself out there. You can't wait around. I mean, it might happen. I've
Mm-hmm.
talked to a lot of people who,
Yeah.
like you said, publishers have reached out to them,
Right.
companies have reached out to them. But I don't think I think that's the exception to the rule. Like, I don't think that that's really the norm for the majority of
Right.
people. Um, and so you can't sit around waiting
Mm-hmm.
for someone to reach out or give you an opportunity.
For sure.
Um, I think one of my favorite collaborations so far has been with Premier Yarn,
Oh yeah.
because so far they have wanted to consistently, like each month or every other month, are sending me yarn for a project. I don't have to make a new pattern. I can use it to create something from like one of my old patterns, and then I just feature the yarn and tag them, and that kind of gets their different yarns out there. And so finding the collaborations that work, because I've worked with some companies where like they want me to do all of this work, and I'm like, I'm only getting paid in yarn,
Yeah. Three
so you might need
collaborations and
to.
three Instagram posts at least 60 seconds long and blah blah.
Yes, I don't want all of those parameters. Like, again, that's why I didn't want to work a 9 to 5 job where like I was doing everything else that other people wanted me to do within a specific box and time frame, and it wasn't my ideas that I was getting to work on. And I think for a lot of creatives, you get a lot of empowerment and excitement and motivation because it's your ideas that you're getting to like put into practice, not what someone else has
Yeah.
given you to do.
I have heard like across the board that Premiere is wonderful to work with and they're like really responsive and supportive.
Mhm.
So that's great to hear.
Yeah.
I actually just placed my first order with them.
Oh yeah.
So I'm excited.
What did you
Yeah.
get?
I got like the Parfait XL
Mhm.
chunky in colors that I cannot get in like the usual one I get. Because like I like to like see my yarn in person. So
Yeah.
the places I go to, yeah, for the giant Chanel is Michael's, and I love
Mhm.
theirs. But like in terms of in-store competition, there kind of is none because I don't think Joanne really makes like this, the
No.
chunky Chanel. They have blanket yarn,
Yep.
but that's a little different. So yeah, Parfait XL is, I would say, the like closer brand. But a
Yes.
little secret is that I learned
Ooh.
sort of, yeah, I know I'm revealing a secret, right? Is my understanding a lot of the giant chunky yarns and blanket yarns and all that, they're all sourced from the same
Mhm.
place. They're actually
You got it.
sourced from like Turkey and stuff. A lot of them come from Turkey. For whatever reason, they have a big like textile
Mhm.
like production there. And I was very like intrigued to hear that it's all about marketing. It really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why there's a lot of them are really similar. So I didn't like I got like certain shades of orange
Mhm.
in Parfait XL and certain shades of brown that I couldn't get elsewhere. And I haven't gotten to use it yet, but I'm excited to. It mixes and matches really well with what I already have.
Did you notice, I don't know if you caught when Hobie and Premier released the same yarn, like right around the same time. It's I can't remember what it's called. From one of them, it's called like a pom pom
Yeah,
something.
it's
It
like
might be
their
Hobie.
speckle. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's like a speckle with little pieces on it, and they're all beautiful colors. I want some so bad, but I'm like, I don't need to buy it yet. If it's still around in the fall, maybe I'll get some. But each Hobie and Premier had different color options.
Yeah.
So it's the same
Mm-hmm.
yarn, but I think the yardage is just a little
Yeah.
different. The color options are a little different. So it's like I would want to order some from Hobie. I think they had like a bright pink, whereas Premier had a bright orange. So it's
Right.
really interesting to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like all from Jade, if you're familiar with her, she's
Hmm.
like a designer. Yeah, she did like a side by side comparison, which was helpful for me because I have not tried certain the thinner ones from
Hmm.
Parquet or sorry
Yeah.
Premier. Um,
Yes.
but I was really curious, like, ooh, do they mix and match well? Because they do have different colorways. So
Hmm.
whatever it is, there must be some kind of negotiation in place with like whoever is the provider, which is always
Yeah.
secret. But yeah, so it's kind of it is nice in a way though, but that is the competition right there, right? I
Hmm.
would like I work with Hobie regularly, and I always am not sure if it's hobby or Hobie, but I'm gonna say Hobie
Yeah.
because you said Hobie,
I
and
think it's Hobie.
yeah, and I heard yeah that well oh sorry I lost my train of thought. Oh, I've
Oh, you're
worked with
good.
them. It's been wonderful, and yeah, it is. It's probably like similarly, same source. It must be similar source at least. Maybe not the same exactly, but definitely similar.
Yeah.
That makes the
Yeah.
prices like more affordable, right? Because competition drives the prices a little more low for us. So
Yep. Yeah. And being able to double check the websites, like making sure, if you can't get it for a good price here, maybe you can get it for a good price here until the other one has a sale. Because I mean, Hobie has great sales. So,
mhm.
it's nice to check that out when I can. But it's interesting with Hobie because I felt like I had a really good relationship with them and I worked with them really regularly. And then the communication with me just kind of stopped. So I don't know. But I'm
I
glad that
know
they're
that they
still,
had a lot of shifts in like
yeah,
personnel. So
yep,
depending on what you were working on in terms of like plus designs, or if you were
yeah,
working on sponsorships for yarn support,
yep,
I know that I had to kind of track down. It was like last summer, but I had
yeah.
to track down who was actually in charge because my point person actually was not there anymore.
And I think
So
that may be what happened with me.
yeah,
I'll have to reach out to you
sure,
messaging
yeah.
because that was
Not that they
they had
dropped you. That's my point.
but
Mhm.
they had provided yarn support for a few things, and last year they actually sponsored our were one of the sponsors for our DIY hook challenge, and gave some gift cards away. And so I reached back out, and
Oh.
um, I even let someone else. I couldn't get any answers, and I reached out to someone else who had been reaching out about like and I think they're moving towards the plus
Yeah.
designs, so like the Hobie Plus. And that may be part of why, like they may be wanting to work more with people who are willing to create, patterns and
Hmm.
things. Um, but it was interesting, and it just the shift. And I think that happens, even we got Joanne last year sponsored the grand prize winning for our kids category. So they sponsored like a $50 gift card for the kids category winner for our hook challenge.
Oh,
And we reached out
wow.
again this year, and they were like, "No, we're just not going to do it this year." And I'm like, "Okay."
Oh,
Like,
that's cool that they even agreed to it once
yes,
to begin with.
yep,
You know?
yep. So, and I think that's why I feel like that's with anything when you're running your own business is continuing to create new relationships because you just never know when like one company decides they're not going to continue working with small designers or, I mean, there were two crochet magazines that went out of business this year, you know,
Right?
so,
Wait,
huh?
which one? You know?
Happily Hooked
Oh,
magazine.
oh my God.
And then I think Interweave was the other one.
Oh,
It was one of the other bigger ones, and I can't remember. Happily Hooked was digital, and I
yeah.
don't know if the other one was or not. But just seeing some of these bigger companies, like I got paid really well for patterns for Happily Hooked. They were easy to work with, and they would pay the designers really well.
Mhm.
But they went under this year, so you just never know what's going to keep providing income when you're working for yourself.
For sure. Yeah, it is a part of the juggling act of like going for projects. Well, when your family obviously depends on it, your livelihood depends on it. Like designing just for fun and doing what floats your boat is not
Mhm.
always possible or feasible. I
Yeah.
should say. Not always, but yeah, it's like up and down every single project every
Mhm.
day. So picking up like consistent projects, as you mentioned, that pay consistently, that's always like nice to have for like, how do you say, stability.
Yes,
um,
exactly.
Also, I just want to acknowledge that I think her name was Patrika. Maybe I'm saying that wrong, but
Mhm.
she's been saying hello for the fifth or sixth
Yeah.
time. I want to say I'm reading
Hello. Yeah.
as I'm conversing. So thank you guys for those who are commenting.
Yes, for everyone who's here and joining
Thank you,
in,
love
we
you.
appreciate you. Yes. I wanted to ask you, what
Yeah.
has been your most challenging pattern to date that when you finally got to release it,
Ooh,
it was like, oh, I can breathe.
that's a good question. Let me think.
Yeah,
Mm,
take your time.
challenging, maybe in the sense of getting all of the math right and the numbers right when I'm writing the pattern. Perhaps maybe capybara. I would
Okay.
say capybara, yeah, because it looks really simple in the shape, purposely, because I really try to go for like a rounded, but unique shape
Mm-hmm.
and something where it's like it doesn't look like another designer has done it before. So I
Mm-hmm.
designed my bar purposely to look different in that way, unique in that way. But doing like the legs was a challenge because like I started, if I'm describing it, let me hold my coffee with my knees. A little dangerous. But anyway, it's like an oval, right? And then
Uh-huh.
from the oval, I split it into 4 circles for the legs. So
Gotcha.
that way it's not sewn on separately. It's all in
Uh-huh.
one piece. Figuring that out with the math was like I was ripping my hair out. I actually, like a good friend of mine, Libby, she helped me like double check and like just was an extra set of eyes in pattern testing and making sure all of the numbers were right. Um, I would say, yeah, that one. But I do like do that to myself where I'm like, I'm not confident because I haven't done it before,
Yeah.
but I do want to try this new method or technique and
Yeah.
try to like improve my own craft. But I want to make sure it's solid before I release it to other people,
Mm-hmm.
make sure that instructions are clear enough. And so if they're confused, I can provide help to them. So
Yes.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite design that you've released?
Gosh, what a loaded question. Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
one that just has a really special place in your heart, you know.
You know, like I would say my grumpy chick.
Yeah.
Um it's I'm so grateful for the response that it has received from the public. It actually started off when I was relatively a new account. It was the pandemic and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, I see all these like really awesome designers hosting crochet alongs. And I
Mm-hmm.
would love to get in on that. And so I invited a couple of friends who were very gracious and like, we're like, yeah, I'm down. And then we hosted like an Easter, kind of like a spring themed crochet along. And the theme was like a tea party, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I created my little duck. There was a bunny, a duck, and a bear character.
Uh-huh.
And at first I was like, or sorry, she's a chick. Why am I saying duck? Um, she's a chicken. That's right.
Yeah.
She, yeah, and like again, how do I put my personal touch on this where
Uh-huh.
it's simple, not overcomplicated, but like something that is like gonna stick in
Yeah.
people's minds. And it wasn't intentional. Like you never know if something's gonna be a hit or miss,
Mm-hmm.
really. Um,
Exactly.
but
Yep.
like just the addition of the eyebrows,
Yeah.
was all it took. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, she became my logo and everything because yeah, to my surprise, people were like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. Or like, she's so grumpy. I love it. And it was just something a little different, right? Other than like the cutesy, like, just the plain black safety eyes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, something really simple that made her who she is,
Yeah.
Gertrude the Grumpy Chick.
That's awesome. And she has a name.
She does. Yeah, and I didn't think that people would really care about the pattern after the crochet along ended. But thankfully, right, since it released 3 years ago now, over 3 years, which is nuts to me. Wait, maybe 2 years. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think 2 years. Yeah. She's I get tagged in a lot of photos of her, and people have made accessories for like earrings. And, yeah, like they've made ginormous ones. They've made outfits. Yeah, different hats. It's been really fun to see, and I'm always so grateful for everyone who shares their work.
And that turned into your logo. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about marketing and like digital design and stuff, but I remember the importance of having a recognizable like logo to go by, even like the font of your handle, right? If you're constantly changing the font, it's like if Target were to suddenly be in cursive letters one day. And like, it's like, can't just do that when you're an established brand.
True.
So pick intentionally like color scheme, logo that's recognizable. Like when you think about all the big brands, like McDonald's does not have to spell out McDonald's on their building. You recognize that them. And yeah, I mean, our work is different, obviously, but that's early on how I decided on making her like a logo.
Yeah. And did you design that yourself, your logo?
I did. I'm so limited, like I said, with digital art and stuff. And like I bought Procreate on my iPad because I'm telling myself like I'm gonna learn how to do all these like layerings and figure out how to make those custom brushes to do exactly what I want. But even just like making a circle and like filling it in took me the longest time. And like it's actually not perfectly symmetrical, but don't look too hard. Yeah, I thought about finding someone to do it for me, like paying them, but then I was like, I don't know who to ask at the same time. But yeah, I did make it myself.
And Happy Clay Pot says, I love Gertrude.
Delia is awesome. Like I found her clay work through a friend who shared her, and she actually made me a custom Gertrude mug. For like a chicken drawing. Yeah, I was like, can you do something with like a mug where she's hanging off the mug like this, you know? And I just thought it was a cute like concept. And she ran with it and made it 10 times better than anything I ever imagined. And like I've also ordered other custom art actually for Gertrude from other designers. That's really cool. I was like in a collection phase at one point.
So we're almost out of time, but I would love to know from you what has being a part of the crochet community meant for you as a part of your life?
Oh man, because I started off crocheting during the pandemic, connecting with people online really meant a lot to me. It wasn't just like, there is a fine line of like, you know, you don't know these people in real life, so you kind of doubt the relationships you form, and you're like, are these even real friendships? But I would say like since I've joined 5 years ago, they absolutely are. Like I talk more to some of my crochet friends than I do than people in real life. You know, and I really appreciate each person. I know that there can be tension in the crochet community sometimes with like people drama. You stole my design and all that, right? And for me, it's like I totally understand both sides, where there is that side where it's like, of course we want to be respectful and do our research, do some simple research to see, is there anything similar to this already that I can like respectfully stray away from. But also at the same time, it's like, it's really difficult to gatekeep things like food and animals that, you know, our creations are bound to look like the actual thing they're based off of. And it's a little bit of give and take. Thankfully, I have had very, very positive relationships with people in crochet community, and I have not had any drama, but I would be like, I'm also very like scared of that too. If someone were to accuse me or something like that, right? But yeah, thankfully I've had nothing but amazing experiences connecting with people here and bonding over art, over creating, and just supporting other people when they have like big successes and small successes.
Yeah.
I think without that, like none of us would be able to get anywhere, you know.
Very true. Very true. I think the community, for anyone who's running a business and within the crochet world, the community, I think, is everything, you know, to have that support and motivation. And I'm the same way. I haven't had any drama, thankfully. But I think I try to curate that in a way of that's not what I want the brand to be about. I think that you're kind of the same way. It's you're there for everybody and you want to spread that happiness and joy with your designs, and I think it makes a difference. Like you attract what you put out is what I
That's
think that comes
a great
down
way
to.
of putting it. Yeah, I think so. I agree. I'm with you that like the drama is, well, I know we're out of time, but we could go on about this forever.
Yes.
Like, open a can of worms. But yeah, for sure. I think it's all about like respect at the end of the day. But you can't assume that from other people. All
Yeah.
you can do is control your own actions and words and how you handle things. And it just reflects like what you have inside, you know, when we are faced with those difficult situations. So, you know, I do feel for people who are going through it or they've been a victim of accusations or you know have also felt the anger of their patterns being stolen, because that's definitely happened to me.
Yes.
Like for sure I've had people like you know totally copy paste, edit out my watermarks. Yeah, it's like the worst feeling ever, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
And I think that's with everything in life. Like there's always someone who's going to ruin a good time because it's
A party
taking the
pooper.
easy way out. Yeah, I know. But it's being aware that that's going to happen and like know how you're going to handle it. You know, and don't lose your joy because someone else is trying to steal it, or you know, I mean, I think there's only so much you can do in that situation, and yeah, I don't want it to make people sad.
True.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to do this again because it was so easy to talk to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your invitation. I was really excited that you
Yeah.
wanted to have me in your little podcast. Is this a podcast? A video live?
Technically, so I do, for anyone who's joining in late and you missed part of this, I do post them on my YouTube channel.
Oh,
And
cool.
YouTube, they have the ability for you to make not only a video playlist, but you can classify it as a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what that means, but it is considered a podcast on YouTube.
Okay, I did use the right word then.
Yes. So that'll be happening probably by this afternoon. I'll have it posted. But where else can people find and support you? Are you on any other social media channels? How can they purchase your patterns? What is that like for you?
Yeah, I have my website, CuriousPapaya.com. And I also am on TikTok, Facebook.
Okay. Do you have a Facebook group, or is it just a Facebook page?
It's a Facebook page.
Okay.
Typically, if people are watching this here on Instagram, they have Instagram, which is my main handle. But a lot of people who crochet who might be like either just choose not to be on social media, or maybe they are in the older population, you know, they prefer Facebook. So that's why I have that, and I try to share there regularly too.
That's awesome. And do you have a YouTube channel by chance?
I do. I started it. Okay. Now I'm dabbling in it, but I can't fully commit to like making full tutorials just yet. Because of the kids at home and everything. But it's definitely my long-term goal for the next couple of years. But it is up.
Awesome.
Started it this year. So it's barely getting off the ground.
That's awesome. And but that's what it takes. Like you've started it, and I think starting off with, I know I started off with like super short tutorials of literally like this is a place in a pattern that people have issues with, or this is how I match or stitch my seams, or this is how I weave in my ends. So like those are shorter videos that would probably be easier for you to film instead of trying to do, because even when I try to do full tutorials, usually my husband will end up yelling at me from the other room, and I'm like, start that over again.
Well, thank you for the tips and the support. I definitely have to check out your page and like take notes for sure.
send you a pattern too. I'm gonna let you just pick one, and you pick one that you want, and we'll see what happens because I want to see it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, of course. Well, have an amazing Friday, and everybody here that's listening to, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys again really soon, and happy hooking, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.